In today's video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I help my clients go from feeling lost, dissatisfied, and emotionally exhausted to thriving with clarity, confidence, and purpose. I've used the methodology that I'm about to share with you with hundreds of freelancers, solopreneurs, and corporate leaders from companies like Google, Meta, Uber, and Netflix, helping them get out of their own way so they can live more fulfilling lives and find more meaning. I know that sounds like a difficult task, but I have many case studies to prove that it's possible, as you can see if you check out the testimonials on my LinkedIn profile. In this video, my job will not be to convince you or prove to you that this is the only way. I'm not going to make any bold claims or crazy promises. I simply want to share what's worked for me and for my clients in the hopes that you get some insights and maybe can implement some of them in your own life. At the end of the video, I'm also going to give you a simple invitation that if you want my help in implementing some of this, you can take advantage of that. But if not, I'm hoping that this is just a helpful training where you can gain some perspective, some insights, and some strategies that you can implement in your own life. But first, let's talk about who this is for and who this is not for. This is not for anyone who's looking for a quick fix. So if that's you, you can click away. The road to a more fulfilling life is one that actually requires continuous work on yourself. However, that doesn't mean that you won't see any fast results, but having a long commitment towards yourself is a requirement for that to happen. This is also not for anyone who's new to personal development or hasn't done any work on themselves before. So if you haven't done a little bit of therapy, coaching, or you're not regularly reading self-help books and listening to podcasts, then this is probably not for you either. And there's absolutely no judgment there because everyone is on their own journey and you're exactly where you need to be. But I just only work with clients who have a certain level of self-awareness, simply because that's where I know that I can provide the most value. Finally, this is not for anyone who isn't truly committed to getting better, because your ability to go from striving to thriving will be directly related to how committed you are to making this a reality. So if this is not a priority for you, that's completely fine, but then maybe this method won't be for you either. Who this is for, however, is for people who are serious about their own personal development, who genuinely want to improve their lives and the lives of the people around them, but who are also willing to have fun along the way. I'm a firm believer that being playful, enthusiastic, optimistic is a powerful approach to creating your ideal future. So if you're looking for something that's not too heavy and you want to have fun even with the hard stuff, then this is for you. It's also for you if you want to keep growing and achieving big goals, but in a healthier, more sustainable way. Because chances are, if you're a high achiever, you're very familiar with that inner critic voice, constantly telling you that you're not good enough or that you're not quite there yet. Well, this method is for people who want to change that but not compromise on their own growth. So if all this sounds like you, then keep watching because you're going to get a lot out of this methodology. But first, let me introduce you to my world and how I got here in the first place. I'm half English, half Danish, but I grew up in France, which has a fairly elitist school system. And as a result of that and the way my parents brought me up, I started to derive a lot of my self-worth and self-esteem from how well I was doing and what people thought of me. I would compare myself a lot to others and I developed some insecurities around my intelligence. So back in 2014, when I got the phone call from the Google recruiter telling me I had the job, it was one of the best days of my life. For me, it was the ultimate proof that I was good enough. It was proof that I actually was intelligent. But the problem with that was that I started attaching my identity to working for big tech companies. I became irrationally terrified of losing my job and even worse, of losing my identity and sense of self-worth. When I was performing well, it felt great, but when I wasn't, it felt terrible. And with my propensity to compare myself, if I wasn't receiving regular praise and getting good results, my mind was constantly finding proof that I wasn't performing. I was always striving, but never thriving. This was a recipe for disaster. And even though I managed to power through for quite some years, eventually it led to me burning out when I was at Uber. At the time, I blamed the company culture and the corporate world in general. So I decided to quit Uber and I became a freelancer, which felt good for a while because I was finally able to detach myself from corporate politics, earn a lot more money, but also work way more sensible hours. But after a year of doing that, even though on paper my life looked amazing, deep down I still felt miserable and like something was missing. This time, however, I blamed the role I was in. So I quit my job to go traveling in Asia. I took an eat, pray, love year off, thinking that it would solve all my problems and I would magically find myself, whatever that means. However, it turns out that when you're traveling, you're so busy experiencing new things that you don't really have much time to focus on yourself. So after 4 months in Asia, I was no way closer to figuring out what I wanted to do. Therefore, when COVID hit and I was forced to come back to Europe, it felt like I was just back to square one. But then during lockdown, I had this epiphany. I wanted to be a life coach. But what I didn't realize was that hundreds of thousands of other people were also having that same epiphany around the same time. But in my mind, I had finally figured out what I wanted to do, a career that gave me meaning and purpose, and now all my problems would finally disappear. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. Starting your own business is super hard. You have to face rejection, you have to face other people's judgment, you have to expose yourself and be vulnerable. And because of my propensity to compare myself, I started noticing all the other coaches that were better than me. I started realizing how far I had to go and feeling like a complete imposter. And all the insecurities that led to me burning out at Uber came back to haunt me. And within 3 months of starting my own business, I burnt out again. This was such a low point for me. How could I burn out as a life coach? Like, I was the one who was supposed to have it all figured out, also I thought. But luckily at the time, I was working with a coach myself, so I had the support that I needed to actually bounce back. I was able to address the real issues and not just continue running away from my problems and putting band-aids over those real problems. I realized that the way I was approaching life before just wasn't sustainable. Before, I would use my inner critic to motivate me. I would be super hard on myself and have very high expectations. I'd only focus on where I should be instead of where I was and what I'd already accomplished. I believed that if I wasn't always working hard, I didn't deserve success. I also thought that I didn't need help and I could figure things out all by myself, mainly by listening to audiobooks or podcasts. But after going through this experience, I realized that there was another approach to life. I learned about slowing down to speed up. I learned to treat myself as I would my best friend, which actually made me even better at taking action. It became easier for me to face my fears and grow my business despite the roller coaster of emotions I was facing on a daily basis. I discovered that working with a coach actually accelerates your results and allows you to make quantum leaps in your life. I went from always being overwhelmed and in survival mode to thriving and having way more fun despite the ups and downs, despite the constant challenges of life. And so part of the purpose of this video is for me to show you how I made this possible for me, but also for a lot of my clients, with the hopes that you can relate and maybe learn from this experience too. Over the last few years, I've developed a methodology that I call striving to thriving, and I'm continuously improving it and fine-tuning it, and especially as I keep growing and evolving myself. And today I'm going to walk you through the latest version, but this is a method that can help you go from feeling lost, dissatisfied, and emotionally exhausted to thriving with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. It's based around 3 main pillars that I believe are essential to living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Those 3 pillars are self-awareness, self-esteem, and self-actualization. The first pillar is self-awareness. If you're feeling lost, dissatisfied, and emotionally exhausted, one of the first places you want to look is within. And the best place to start is with your values. The term company values is thrown around a lot in the corporate world. You get trainings on them, you give feedback, you even get reviewed based on them. But when's the last time anyone asked you what your own values were? Because your values are like your guiding principles. They are your commandments. They help you with decision making. They're the compass that allows you to be in integrity and to be true to yourself. But if you don't know what they are, it's like running around like a headless chicken. And if you're unhappy in your current job, it might simply be that your personal values just don't align with the company values. So by taking the time to identify your values, you can start making course corrections and be a lot more true to yourself. Another question we rarely ever take the time to ask ourselves is this one. What are my needs other than sleep, food, and shelter? What are the things that I need to feel energized, to be at my best? Your needs are like these buckets of water. When they're full, you feel great. You're more patient, you're more optimistic, you have more energy, you see solutions everywhere. But when one of your buckets gets emptied, then you become a bit more grumpy. Your mood becomes lower. You tend to only see problems everywhere. And you've probably also heard of the expression, when you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. Well, a lot of the time, what you end up saying no to is one of your needs. For example, when you say yes to that late night meeting, you're actually saying no to quality time with your family. When you say yes to that new project, you're actually saying no to physical exercise or alone time. But if you don't know your needs, then how can you know what you're actually saying no to? And by getting clear on your needs, it also becomes so much easier to set boundaries. Another integral part of self-awareness is understanding and knowing how to process emotions. Most of us grew up in a society where you're not meant to be sad, you're not meant to be angry or scared. We learn to avoid them and suppress them. But emotions are a part of what it means to be alive. And if we don't learn how to process them in a healthy way, it's a bit like a pressure cooker. It builds up and eventually it just explodes, often in unjustified ways. So if you want to live a more balanced and fulfilling life, it's essential to know how to process your emotions in a healthy way. The second pillar is self-esteem. This represents what you actually believe about yourself. It's what goes on behind the confident exterior and behind the outward success. For most high achievers, this will be the cause of so much stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. It's that constant feeling of always being inadequate. But most of your self-esteem actually comes from years of conditioning that have made you unconsciously driven by stories and beliefs from your past. These can be beliefs like, I have to be perfect, I always have to be strong, I'm not good enough. And these beliefs drive how you make decisions and how you live your life in the present moment. So by bringing these beliefs to light, challenging them and creating new beliefs, you can start reducing the hold that they have over you and start finding more inner peace within your mind. Another way to increase your self-esteem is to identify the ways in which you self-sabotage. Are you a perfectionist? Are you a procrastinator or a people pleaser? These types of behaviors impact your self-esteem in way more ways than you think. They keep you stuck and lower your self-belief. So by identifying, naming them, and developing strategies to overcome them, you can stop getting in your own way and start reinforcing the belief that you have in yourself. Finally, and one of the most essential parts of self-esteem is self-love. And by self-love, I don't mean the fluffy-duffy unicorn state where you look in the mirror and all you see is candy floss and rainbows. No, I'm talking about the raw, unconditional love for all the different parts of you, even the ones that you don't like that much. It's learning to love your inner critic. It's learning to be there for your inner child and start treating yourself like you would your best friend. This is also one of the key components of achieving big goals and continuing to grow, but in a sustainable way that doesn't always leave you feeling unsatisfied and like you're not quite there yet. Which leads us to the final pillar, which is self-actualization. The realization of your full potential. It's becoming everything you are capable of becoming. And for that, you need a vision, something to work towards, something that pulls you forward. Also, anything that was ever created by humans, with the exception of a few things like penicillin or folk music, was first conceptualized in someone's mind. So naturally, if you want to make anything a reality, a great place would be to start by taking the time to visualize it. Because when you visualize your success, your brain starts unconsciously looking for ways to get you there. It also leads to you having better thoughts, which leads to you taking better action, which leads to you getting better results. So creating a vision isn't about magically manifesting things into reality, it's about helping you take more and better action towards achieving them. Another key element of self-actualization is purpose. We live in a world that's always telling us to follow our heart, quit our jobs, and do what we love. And this can be so demotivating when you don't even know where to start. But the truth is that if you're currently feeling lost and without a sense of purpose, it's probably not because you haven't found it yet. Instead, it's more likely because you're not truly clear on who you really are. Because finding your purpose isn't about realizing your destiny. It's not a job, it's not a career, it's not a relationship. Your purpose is simply being the truest, most authentic version of yourself. It's not letting fears get in your way or self-doubt hold you back. It's not letting others or society dictate how you should live your life. Your purpose isn't about finding that one thing you were meant to do. It's about the growth you experience and the contributions you make simply by being you. And what makes all of this possible and what ties everything together is taking regular and consistent action. Taking action is at the core of self-actualization, and I would say the most important part of self-development in general. Because without action, everything I mentioned in this video is completely irrelevant. But by becoming a great action taker, you can completely transform your life. This is where effective planning and accountability comes in, but also having someone in your corner to continuously remind you of what you're capable of. someone to continuously bring you back to your most resilient, wise, and powerful self so you can move mountains and achieve things that you never thought were possible. And this is where having a coach can be a real game changer, because it will allow you to spend more time creating and living from your fullest and highest potential. So now you might be asking yourself, does this actually work? Well, here are a few examples of clients who've gone through this process. First of all, we have Paul, who was at a low point in his life. He was unhappy with his job, overwhelmed, stressed all the time. And because of that, things weren't going really well in his relationship. But going through this process completely changed his life. He started putting himself first, which allowed him to stop resenting everyone around him. By taking more ownership, he started enjoying his job and even got promoted multiple times. To top things off, his relationship has never been stronger, and they recently had their first child together. Then there's also my client Hannah, who was always super hard on herself and unable to slow down. Now she truly values herself, her time, and her contributions to the world. Then there's also Georgia, who was always beating herself up and believed she wasn't good enough. Now she's applying for bigger roles and doing side projects she would have never dreamed of doing before. And I have many, many more case studies like this and testimonials that you can see on my LinkedIn profile. However, my point here is not to convince you of anything. But if you've watched this video and you've been intrigued by my journey, by the model I shared, and maybe you think this could also work for you, then I'd love to invite you to send me a message on LinkedIn. You can find the link below with the word thriving. After that, we'll brainstorm together on how I can best support you and how we can get you to spend less time striving and in survival mode and more time thriving with a clear sense of purpose and direction. If you're already in conversations with me and you've just watched this, just send me a message. Let me know you finished it and we'll take it from there. But either way, there's no pressure from my side. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm just here to show you what I believe is possible for you. I also only work with clients who are already committed and ready to step into the person that they know they're capable of being. But if you don't feel ready to reach out, that's also completely fine. What you can do is follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube. I'd love to keep helping you in any way that I can. I really hope that you found this video useful. Again, if you know that you're ready to go from feeling lost and dissatisfied to having a strong sense of purpose, clarity, and direction in your life, if you want to work with someone who can help you get there a lot faster and probably a lot further, then I'd love you to send me that message with the word thriving. We'll create a plan together and see how we can get you where you want to go. Worst case scenario, we build a plan. Best case scenario, we work together and you get there far quicker than if you've done on your own. So if that's you, send me that DM. But for anyone else, I really hope you keep enjoying my content. As always, much love.